Let's see. No.
No.
Panelists.
Perfect. John here. And I'm assuming it's okay if we forego introductions.
Sounds good.
There's no public on?
No. Would you guys like to wait another minute to see if John pops on, or okay, here we go. Perfect.
Good timing.
Perfect.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. It is 8:31, and let's go ahead and call this meeting to order of the City School Liaison Committee. I don't think we have any interested members of the public wanting to make a public comment, but I will still mention it now in case somebody popped on.
We have one member of the public that's calling by phone. Please press *9 if you wish to make a comment.
For some reason, it's not allowing me to share my video. Let me mute myself.
Okay, so then I will go ahead and just close this opportunity for public comment. And moving on, we are at the part where we need to approve the minutes from our September 4th meeting. I'm sorry, who said that?
Rich.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have a motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Trustee Horner. All in favor of approving the minutes from September 4th as is? Can we just do a raise of the hand for the four of us? Is that okay? Okay, perfect. So that was unanimous approval of our minutes. And next order of business, Joint City Morgan Hill and Morgan Hill Unified District items. First up is our courtyard space study. And I understand that both parties have reports. So I guess I will invite the city to go first.
Great, thank you. Chris?
Yeah, sure. So this is just a very short update, actually, to inform the committee that we are finalizing the space study. Actually, it has been finalized, and we'll be bringing the space study individually to the city council and the school board separately for initial review, and then back to this committee. So that's really the extent of the report today, but just in notification that will be happening in November as we planned. We've been working together, the city staff and the team at the school district. So that is just about ready to go.
Thank you. I don't know, Kirsten, is it Anissa who will speak on behalf of the district?
I can, and Chris articulated, we've been working very closely, much the same information, but maybe to add for our school board and the city's information is we're currently in the process of doing several facility study sessions with our school board to align our financial resources. And so obviously this comes at an opportune time as we plan out our facilities for the next 5 years. This will be a key component in allocating resources. And so we'll have a preliminary conversation next week at our facility study session, and then it'll be part of our full board discussion on November 3rd.
Great. Any questions on this item?
Are there any highlights that you want to share, or do you want to really wait? I guess my question is, it going in a certain direction where you're going to be making a recommendation to us?
I think initially it's going to be a report out on what we found and kind of a refresher on kind of the next potential steps, because we outlined several years ago some potential steps on if there is enough room for both organizations for the long term, as well as room for what we currently have there, as well as potentially room for additional things to go there, and then opportunities to continue at that site permanently, or an opportunities to go to different sites. So it's not going to be an exact recommendation, but it'll be at least for the city side, recommendations on some next steps and some policy questions that we would ask based on the results of the study.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Okay, let me see if there's any virtual hands. Not seeing any other questions. We can move on to our SRO program. Would the district like to start first on this one?
Steve, do you have a preference on whether we go first or you? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted. You're muted, Steve.
Steve, you're muted.
Oh, you're still muted. There you go.
There we go. Okay. So I don't have I can't access the results because this is Allison's computer and I can't access them. So go ahead and go. And then if it comes down to it and I can't do it, I'll ask Lene to bring them up and then we'll talk through them.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start then. So Chief Palsgrove is going to just sort of review just a few facts about the SRO program, but really focus the time on what was included in the packet. This committee asked us to come back with some data that goes back 5 years to look at the activity of the SROs and to look at the arrests and how they were resolved. And then he'd be happy to answer any questions on the data. And so with that, Chief.
Good morning. So I've sent out the analysis that Margarita did for the 2 school resource officers. The analysis reviewed 5 years worth of data. And most notably at the 2 high schools where the 2 SROs are assigned, Sobrato and Live Oak, we looked at the demographics of the school in comparison with the demographics of youth that were receiving citations. And at Live Oak, the citations were trending as you would expect. And at Sobrato, we noticed that the Hispanic youth population received 10.6% more citations when compared to the demographics of Hispanics attending Sobrato. And so there's room for us to dive into that data and take a look. From the information that I gathered from the SROs is that most of those citations were possession of marijuana. And that has to do with the yard monitors at the schools, how active they are, their knowledge of where the activity occurs at, and that could definitely play a part in why there was a more marijuana citations given at that school, and that would account for a significant portion of that percentage. Overall, the analysis also reveals that the reasons for youth citations are for fights and possession of marijuana specifically. And in this discussion, I have been meeting with people on both sides of the SRO discussion. And more recently, I met with Deputy District Attorney Adam Flores, and we are exploring a restorative justice program for youth in South County. It's at its very infancy of discussion, and but we are having that discussion to see what that would look like. And as far as current activity from the SROs, social media is playing a more significant part of their responses. We've had a 12-year-old chatting with an older male over TikTok that they were investigating, some social media threats and harassment over social media platforms, vandalisms at the schools, threats and harassment towards principal. They've done a run, hide, defend presentation at Live Oak. and an investigation regarding Zoom harassment. And that concludes the SRO report. Are there any questions?
Yeah, you could shut that one down. All right. Just got it together.
Perfect. I do see questions from Mayor Constantine and from Trustee Horner. So, Mr. Mayor, would you like to ask your question first?
Thank you, Trustee Sullivan. Chief, is there any data, whether anecdotal or empirical, on whether or not those citations that were issued over a 5-year period would have been issued regardless if a SRO was on campus or not?
Yeah, usually those are referrals by faculty monitors on campus that catch the students vaping, usually with marijuana inside the vaping pens, and are reported to the SRO. And so if the SRO wasn't on campus, it would be assumed that those reports would make it into the police department, and an officer would respond to handle the situation.
So basically, the calls for any drug possession would have resulted in a citation regardless if the SRO was on campus or not.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Trustee Horner?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief, and excellent data and excellent report, really helpful. As you pointed out, there's quite a difference in the marijuana possession arrest rate at Sobrato versus Live Oak. And of course, that raises the question in my mind, why? And the why, I guess I'll frame as, is it a difference in behavior? And these are relatively small number of students out of a large population in both cases. So I guess I'm trying to understand, and I don't know if the data can tell us, is there a, quote, a bigger marijuana problem at Sobrato, or is there a difference in approach between school staff at the two campuses on how it's addressed? And maybe that's not an answerable question, but given we have two campuses and very different data on that line item, yeah, I don't know if anyone can explain the why, what's behind the numbers.
John, can I offer,
Please.
If you could frame the question relative to our discussion about the SROs and their role on campus, then we could kind of stick to that rather than go to the specifics of the student behavior. And I know there can be a link, but you know what I'm asking?
Okay, I will try and reframe it. I guess, from the point of view of the SROs and the police department, why do you think it is that there have been so many more citations on one campus versus the other from the information you have available?
Well, I'd like to start by saying, I think this presentation and the information that we've gathered from the statistics calls for us to take the next steps and maybe a deeper dive and meeting with the school administration and the stakeholders over there to analyze the reasons why some of this is occurring, and then also taking a look at what are our next steps. If citations and leading to education is not working, then what? So I think that we perhaps might not be to a point where we should be answering that question without contacting all the stakeholders involved at each site. But certainly something
That's
I'm
fair.
interested.
So, I mean, I hear you're curious about the same thing, and there's work to be done to try and figure that out. Is that a fair paraphrase of what you said?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Carr?
Thank you. I'm curious in the question that John asked as well, and if it's inappropriate because we want to focus on SROs, that's fine. But if there are ways that either we're seeing behaviors at two different campuses affecting some of these things, I'd be curious about that conversation as well, and ways that we might jointly be addressing that. But Chief, I wanted to ask you, in your report, you make a statement, SROs are able to mediate situations that would have otherwise resulted in a citation by a patrol officer. Do I read that to mean that there are probably fewer citations because we have dedicated SROs that are able to work with students and work with the faculty and the administrators, resulting in fewer citations than if a patrol officer were simply called by the school site?
Yes, that is my belief, based on the discussions that I've had with SROs and the preventative and intervention actions taken by the SROs. Yes.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit more? And I know you've done this in previous meetings that this group has had and in the report, but tell me a little bit more about what SROs are doing today.
Sure. Today, they are still investigating reports of crimes. Some of those things that I mentioned earlier, such as the social media threats and inappropriate photographs or discussions happening with minors and adults on social media, being reported through the school channels. There's still social media threats and harassment. There's issues over Zoom that are reported to the SROs. There's still things happening on the school campus, vandalism that they're responding to and investigating. They're still conducting presentations. And those were the more recent reports that I received from our SROs.
And they're still, excuse me, they're still available to school administrators in the same fashion. I understand in talking to principals and SROs, being able to exchange things like cell phone numbers has been very important in the way that this program works. And they're still accessible to those administrators?
Yes, and they're still going out to the schools, specifically Sobrato, Live Oak, Britain, and Central, and making face-to-face contact with the staff at the school.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks, appreciate it, Chief.
Yes.
Thanks, Wendy.
No problem. Seeing no further questions, Superintendent Pintando, would you like to share the district's presentation?
Yes, and so thank you, Lene, for getting me the links this morning. And so this is the first group that's going to see the survey. As we can recall, we had a survey that was very brief and in a short timeline, and we really didn't push it out and vet the questions because we were just kind of trying to take a pulse of where people were before, but the results weren't really valid because of the size of the responses, the size of the groups that responded and such. So we crafted it, and Lene has put it out to the individuals, the staff, students, and parents. I'm going to do my best. First off, can you see me in the video? Can you see my, okay, good. This is really glitchy this morning, so I apologize. Tech hardwired me into the system now, and so hopefully this will work better. And I even showered today, so I really wanted to be on video. So we have student, staff, and parent. Wendy, Vice President, what is your preference as far as the order? And I will try and share. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I don't have a preference,
Okay.
so I will defer to you.
Anyone want to throw one out? Okay, why don't we go with what we're all about? Let's go with students first. That's okay. All right, so now I'm going to, oh, I don't think I have the power. Oh, yes, I do. Now I do. Thank you. Power to screen share. All right, are you able to see?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So here it is. We have 467 responses, which is quite a bit for high school students that don't have to do something, and it takes time. And so these are the questions. Well, as a matter of fact, instead of to save time, let me just go to the responses, and that'll have the questions attached to it. So from students, the grades that they're in, and you'll see that the bulk of them are actually seniors. although all other grades from 6th through 12th were targeted, and the percentage there. And then the breakdown for their self-response on identification of ethnicity. Interesting dynamics. I could hold it there for a little bit. Feel free to jump in, unmute yourself and say stop, or I have a question, and then we could address it at the time.
I have a quick one on the demographics. How do the demographics of respondents compare to the, I guess, primarily our high school populations?
So we haven't, so again, you're getting this raw from us. We haven't analyzed it. That's a great question. And so we'll look at that as well. We know that it is significant. I was a little surprised that we have 14 that identify as Native American, but that's great. But great question. We'll look at that comparison.
Just at a glance, this looks quite different from what I perceive our demographics to be, but I'm sure you'll look at that later.
Yeah, well, and as you, yes, and as you look down this, you'll see that it is self-identification. So you have people that identified as one person, light skin, one identified as a gamer, one said, don't worry. So you have some flexibility in their self-identification. Most of those would actually account in prefer not to respond, or I'd rather not say. So one said, awesome.
So I'm assuming then that part of the response was they could fill in the blank if they chose like an other. Okay, got it.
When they have other, they can put what that other is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say, because I know in the Chiefs report, they put like they were reporting for Live Oak, 53%, I think, for the high schools.
Yeah.
38.4 are Hispanic at Sobrato. So there's some disparity even between the two high schools, but about 34% white across both high schools in their demographic reporting. And then about 2% Black students across both high schools.
Okay.
So.
Very good. Thank you for that.
Okay.
So here's their interaction response. I've had direct interaction, majority, at least 4/5, say, of those that responded. And we could extrapolate that out to the full population, or we could say that some of those that have had interaction didn't respond, a majority, or some that didn't aren't responding, but it is what it is. It's raw. The interaction with the SRO was positive. So if you tie those two pie pieces together, which is in a, assumption, maybe 14%, it's hard because we're not integrating these responses at this, through this process. One question might naturally be, of those that had interaction, the 17.6 pie up here actually should reflect this entire 100%, right? So of all the students that responded, if everybody answered appropriately, then this entire pie with the 71% non-applicable is that 17.6% statistically rational determination, but maybe not accurate when we're talking about students who might say, I had no interaction, but my interaction was negative or whatever. So. Okay, so this is what and I might have a little trouble with this one, and maybe I need to open it up. Nope, that's to copy it. So maybe I could turn to Lene, if you know, if this is the entire list here. I'm going through the questions. So maybe it got cut off a little bit, but this one says maintain a safe and secure campus. 146 is what they understand the role to be. Preserve life and property in a manner. Let's click on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure why the question would have been cut off because this is supposed to be a copy of the actual survey and the actual questions. So,
Okay, let me go back to the questions then. Question.
okay, that might be good.
Yeah. Okay, so here are their choices. Maintain a safe and secure campus from intruders, preserve life and property in a manner which promotes community, develop positive relationships with students, staff, and community, support district staff in securing and transporting of prohibited confiscated items that are illegal to have, and it probably says, here we go, on campus under California state law, all of the above, I don't understand. And then other would probably, oh, then they could add an option, I see. General other, okay, let me go back. Okay, so those are the basic ones. So we do have them all there. Again, feel free. I don't have your hand raised or anything else. I'm not watching for that. So as I mentioned before, just take yourself off mute and jump in. Okay, SRO makes me feel safe at school, with about a little over 1 in 10 feeling no. And then 43, less than 43 agree, 43% agree, less than half. And then the others sometimes not sure. So it's distracts or has distracted me from my schoolwork. I don't know what this percentage is here. Oh, there we go. 23%, a little over 1 in 5 say that it has. Oh no, I'm sorry, 5%, a little less than 5%. 23 students of the whole say that it has been distracting. And you see the others there. Statement about all students receiving equal treatment. 12% disagree. The bulk either agree or sometimes or aren't sure. And considering that many of them have said that they have had no interaction with SROs, that kind of helps divide that out. Felt comfortable. Comfortable with the presence. And then number 9 is I felt comfortable discussing a safety issue concerning myself or a friend with an SRO. You know, we can make assumptions on not sure because they haven't had interaction, or, you know, absolutely, they could say not sure if they have had interaction. I mean, you could go every which way on that. I don't think there's a way to integrate those questions. All right, now this is huge. 10 has, let me just show you, 172 responses. Anything else? And this is very, very interesting to read. So I can skim through it, but in the end, you're gonna probably want, well, some of you, maybe not all of you, if you're not that interested, you're gonna, I believe you're gonna wanna read through them individually. And it'll generate questions, and it'll generate also an understanding that the perception is quite varied. The opinions are quite varied. And I would say that in my skimming through them, for all three groups, for students, parents, and staff. I'm not going to be able to stop on all these, but again, feel free if you want me to stop on any. So we're going to have to edit this, obviously, if we publish it.
Like I said, I'm very interested in reading all the comments, so this probably is not an effective way to do that.
Exactly. That's why I made that statement up front.
So, you know,
Is that maybe something that you can send to us in a separately, maybe as an attachment, or?
yeah, we have to, like, you know, rake through it to make sure that there's no inappropriate and all that.
And Steve, I just got a message from the member of the public that's on, and he also would also like to make this public.
Yeah, and we made it anonymous for particular reasons. And then after we go through these, I will ask Pilar, if she's on, to share a little bit about the personal connections that we've had with students. Although these are, you know, very personal statements from students, there was some also engagement from the principals at the sites. And we're going to transcribe that and make it those anonymous as well. And then we'll provide them. And then
Steve, any chance of getting an unredacted copy for the board? Not necessarily, not giving us names, but, you know, I want to see the comments as they were submitted.
You mean with profanity and all? Is that what
Yeah.
you're asking? Oh, yeah. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So that is the student.
okay, so since you asked us just to jump in, this looks like a large enough body of data. It would be really interesting to see, you know, the detailed responses disaggregated somewhat by the groups. Like under the I consider myself, obviously that the groups that have one or two, you know, people identifying it, that's not very meaningful, but certainly, you know, we have responses. I've had contact with an SRO, or I have not had contact with an SRO. So seeing how the answers to the other questions came out, you know, first filtered, you know, those who've had contact and those who haven't had contact would be interesting. And then also from some of the, I guess, statistically significant group identification, the same thing. Again, just glancing at those comments, you know, the experience is different just by random individual, or is there some other factor? So I know that's the sort of thing that, you know, Glenn Webb does amazing things, you know, slicing and dicing data 100 different ways to gather more meaning out of it. And that certainly would be interesting